we've begun a study on building strong families. You know, building strong families is one of the most important things that we can ever do in this world. Matter of fact, in the book of Deuteronomy, God focuses on families when He's trying to teach His people to train their children in the way that they should go. And so He's very much involved in families. Family, other than our relationship with God, is the most important thing that we will ever have in our lives. And so if we're going to build strong families, first of all, we need to know each other, and we talked about that last week. But also, if we're going to build strong families, we need strong families that know how to fight, that fight well. You know, when I left the church that I served in Tylertown, I was moving on to another church. A lady in the church that was a very sweet, precious lady, had gone to the Holy Land with us a couple of years before, gave me a little book entitled All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten by Robert Fulghum. And in this little book, Robert Fulghum did an excellent job showing us that everything that we ever need to know in life, how to deal with life, we learned when we were just small children. It's an excellent book. But he wrote another book that was not quite as good as that one, and the book was entitled It Was on Fire When I Lay Down on It. Now, he came up with these catchy names for all of his little books. And he explained where he got the title for this little book. He said, a tabloid paper carried a story stating simply that a small town emergency squad was summoned to a house where smoke was pouring from an upstairs window. The crew broke in and found a man lying on a smoldering bed. After the man was rescued and the mattress fire put out, the obvious question was asked, how did this happen? I don't know, the man replied. It was on fire when I lay down on it. Who in their right mind would lay down on a burning mattress? Everybody knows you're going to get burned. But then who in their right mind would say something to a friend or a loved one that would cause them to get burning mad and fire off something painful back at us? Why would we speak that way to our family, to our friends, to those that we care the most about? Well, the answer is a lot of us would do that, maybe all of us. Sometimes we're just not really in our right minds. Sometimes we lose our tempers, we get in a foul mood, we want to hurt somebody. We want to say something caustic or start an argument just because we're feeling ornery that day. And more often than not, these pain-filled conversations happen between us and the members of our family. After all, we live with these people 24/7, and they're the people who are closest to us, and they're the people who matter the most to us. What I have observed in more than 30 years of ministry is that I know you'll be surprised at this, but there are no perfect families. If you think somebody's a perfect family, ask if you can come spend a week or two with them. You will find out very quickly that there are no perfect families. Now, I'll tell you, a strong family is better than a perfect family, at least somebody's perfect family we think in our mind, because when you develop strength, you possess the power to bear with one another, to overcome obstacles, to solve problems together, and to solve whatever bothers you as a family unit. So this morning it is my goal to help strengthen your family by helping you to learn how to fight well. James chapter 4 verses 1 and 2. James says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You want something but don't get it. You kill and covet, but you cannot have what you want. You quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend whatever you get on your pleasure. To be human is to experience conflict. It's not whether we will fight. It's not a question about if we're going to fight, but it's how we fight that determines how healthy our family will be and what type of family member you will be. You see, usually when you fight, you do so because you're fighting mad. And when you're mad, science shows that you actually lose 20 intelligent quotient points. Your IQ goes down 20 points. Now, there are two reasons why it's hard to fight well. First of all, when a person is mad, their IQ drops by those 20 points that I'm talking about. This is a physiological reaction. It is the fight or flight syndrome that kicks in. Your epinephrine kicks in, you get red in the face, your blood drains from your brain, it drains down to your muscles so that you can be ready, prepared to protect yourself or to run. And so it is a physiological reaction that affects our psychology as well. So when we get mad, we're actually stupid. When I'm mad, I'm stupid. Have you ever been stupid mad? I have. I hate to admit it. And thankfully, that happened a lot more when I was much younger than it does now. Fighting well is so important that you want to do it at your best and not at your worst. Don't do it when you're mad. Don't do it when you're just so angry that you cannot think straight. Have you ever been in those situations where you got angry and you said some things that were really stupid, and then later on, you're sitting down and you think, man, why did I say that? Or as your mind's thinking more rationally, well, why didn't I say this? Something that would have been better. And so, we don't need to fight when we're mad. Now, I want you to just say over in your mind, or you can say it out loud with me. Why don't we try that? I will not fight when I'm mad. Try it with me. I will not fight when I'm mad. Second, when I'm mad, I don't think good. When I'm mad, I don't think good. Third, when I don't think good, I say something that will hurt. Say it with me. When I don't think good, I will say something that will hurt. Fourth, I don't want to hurt those I love. I don't want to hurt those I love. So make a promise to yourself and to God right now that you will not fight when you're mad. You will let yourself cool down. You will let yourself think rationally, and then you will fight in a proper way. Recent research shows that marital happiness is not all about whether you have differences or not, but how you handle those differences. So let me show you how you can handle them. There are 5 different ways that you can fight. The first way that a lot of people fight is they just leave. I leave. You say, I don't want to talk about it. Or you get hurt and you leave the room. And the problem never gets solved. You just go. I don't want to talk about it. Another aspect of I leave is that you just clam up and you become silent. You don't say anything. You might be in the room, but you've emotionally left the room. Elvis is not in the house. Don't talk to me. I'm not here. And so you leave. You don't want to face the problem. You don't want to face the situation. Second, I look out for myself is another way that people fight. And the goal of this method is to win at all cost. It doesn't matter what happens to the other person as long as I win. If you get wounded in the process of me getting my way, so be it. You should not have gotten in my way. As I had written this message, and this past week, you see my face is really red. I haven't been out in the sun for 12 hours fishing. I had a procedure done that, to kill precancerous cells, and so that's why that is. And I look 100% better today than I did Tuesday and Wednesday. And so I've been in the house all week long, and the other night there was a little movie came on entitled The Breakup. You may have seen it. It has Vince Vaughn in it, and it has Jennifer Aniston. And in it, this is a unmarried couple who supposedly loves each other, but they have a big fight. And so they break up. But they neither one want to leave the condominium. And Vince Vaughn is the epitome of this, of he just wants to hurt the other person. They both want to hurt each other, but it really shows him in that light tremendously. Until finally at the end of the movie, of course, they learn that they really did care about each other, and, he learned a lesson. A lot of people have this "I look out for myself" syndrome. That comes from our world. Our world says take care of number one. Take care of yourself. Win at all costs. It's all about me. And so that is another way that people fight. A third way that people fight is they say, "I let you win." You might say, "It's okay, I love you more than I love getting my way, so you can win. I let you have it your way." Now, this way has its merits unless you do it all the time about things that really do matter to you. In that case, your place in the relationship starts to shrink, and the other person becomes big while you become small, and the relationship is all out of kilter because you are always giving over and acquiescing to the other person, even with those things that mean a lot to you. Fourth, I give a little to get a little. Now, this is the negotiating style that the Democrats and the Republicans use all the time, and they still don't get along. Negotiation can work sometimes, but not in a close relationship. Neither of us is probably going to feel really satisfied if I give a little and you get a little, unless we have worked it out. It may be that we're settling for less than what God has in mind for us. And so giving a little and to get a little, it has its merits, but it's not the best way. Now, the best way to fight is that we look out for each other. Now, this is God's method for fighting. In Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 through 4, Paul writes, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look out not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others." If everyone in the world operated this way, we'd be close to problem-free. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. It doesn't work that way in churches. I have preached that sermon based on those two verses many times to sermons where people in the church just couldn't get along because they were all thinking about me. But when you do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, and in humility you consider others better than yourselves, then it's that type of relationship. Paul goes on in that passage of Scripture to use Jesus Christ as the model or the example of one who thought more about others than he thought about himself, who was willing to come and take upon himself the form of a man and to suffer death on the cross so that we could be saved. This is the "you watch my back and I'll watch yours" method. Now let's look at the anatomy of a fight. In every disagreement, there are two elements that need to be resolved and worked on. First of all, there's the issue. What is the issue? In counseling, premarital counseling that I often do, I go through this pretty intensely with those who are thinking about getting married. Because I know, as well as you do, that there are no couples who never fight. If they don't fight, then they must be brain dead, because we all have our wills and our wishes, and we all have things that we want, and so we won't always agree 100% of the time. And so I tell people that when you fight, you can either be a thermometer or a thermostat. A thermometer just registers the temperature. It doesn't do anything to bring the temperature down. A thermostat maintains the right temperature. And when we get mad, we can begin to focus on things other than the issue. I tell them, always think about what the issue. Let's just say you're redoing your house, and this bedroom gets painted this color, and the wife loves this color. And so the husband hadn't seen what color it's going to be till he walks in after work. He said, "Man, that's a horrible color. You always pick the wrong color." What did he do? He left the issue and he attacked the person. The issue's the color that he doesn't like. He could have said, "I don't like this color. I really wish we'd have done it another color." But he went from the issue to the second thing that we want to look at is the relationship. When we leave the issue and begin to attack the person, then sooner or later we're going to be attacking the relationship, because when you attack the person and the argument escalates and you're like a thermometer, you're getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and the relationship and the argument's escalating, finally she might say, "Well, if that's the way you feel, I'll just move home with my mama." She just attacked the relationship. And so, if we're going to fight, we need to fight correctly. If you look at it this way, you've decided to fight in the 4 different areas of focus and value. If you value the issue highly, but the relationship not much, you're going to look out for yourself. You know, if you love the relationship, you love your husband, or you love your wife, you love your children, you know, so I'm going to look out for the relationship. You're going to look out for yourself, Secondly, if you value the relationship highly, but the issue itself is of low importance to you, then you're just going to let me win. And see where that is on that scale. It's down in that lower right quadrant. You're just going to let it go. You know, this issue doesn't mean enough to me to tear up my relationship. If you value neither very much, you're just going to leave. I don't value the relationship, and I don't value the issue. I'm just going to walk out the door. It's not worth fighting over. And if you value both of them a little, then you'll compromise, where you'll get a little and you'll give a little. But if you value both a lot, then you need to look out for each other. We'll work for each other's benefit. We'll try to work together to work on the issue to determine what we need to do to get it right. For me and for you. Now, how do we fight? Let's look at the fight method. First of all, you need to figure out the issue. What is it we're really fighting about? Let's just say, and I heard another counselor give this example, if I can remember it correctly. He said his wife had inherited a couple of $1,000, and boy, when she inherited this $2,000, he said, "Ding, ding, 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 there's that sports car I've been wanting to get. I mean, that's enough for a good down payment on that sports car." But they had to come to terms, and he had to realize that, you know, she inherited it. She might need to have a say-so in how we spend this money. The issue was the money and how it should be taken care of, what we should do with it. And so both husband and wife had to sit down and decide what they wanted to do with that. She inherited it, but she's still a part of this relationship, so in a sense it's his money as well. I'm not one of those where I keep all my money, you keep all your money, and you do with yours whatever you want, I'll do with mine whatever you want. That's not a relationship, that's an arrangement. And a relationship is what's yours is mine and what's mine is yours, and we'll both decide how it needs to be utilized. And that's when you work together to figure out what you do. So you figure out the issue. In that first example I gave you about the room that was to be painted, the issue was the color of the room. Stay on the issue. If you have a disagreement about the issue, that's fine. But work through the issue. If it's a flaming pink and you don't like pink, tone it down to something that's a little better that your husband can agree with. And so let's figure out what the problem is. Second, identify each person's needs. What's your need? Well, I'm a lady. I like pink. Well, I'm a man. I can't stand pink. Well, my need is for something a little more neutral there. Instead of a flaming pink and a bright blue, let's come down and let's do a mauve color. Something that we can both agree on. We can like it a little bit better. My needs, I don't want to just have it hitting me in the face every time I walk in the room. So, identify your needs. Generate solutions. And as you talk through a situation, you can come up with what is the proper solution to settle this issue. Name calling is never the proper issue. We never help anything by calling the other person a name or attacking that individual or attacking the relationship. We generate solutions by saying, here's the issue, here are my needs, here are your needs, that what do we need to do to bring my needs and your needs together so that we can work it out. Fourth, and this is very important, have prayer together. This not only brings the power of God to bear on your situation, but it serves as a test of whether you really heal the relationship or not. You know, it's hard to pray with somebody if you still have resentment and anger toward them. So if you pray together about the matter, and you've disagreed about this matter, but if you pray about the matter, that will dissolve any resentment, any hard feelings, because either you won't be able to pray because you'll be still so bound up in your anger, and you can't pray for somebody when you're mad at them, that you won't be able to pray. So when you pray, it helps you to resolve or work through any residual anger or feelings that you have in the situation. And fifth, take responsibility for the solutions. The solutions come from both of them. You own them. Take responsibility for them. Work them out. Now let me conclude with some biblical principles for you. In his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, verses 23 and 24, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brother, then come and offer your gift. Now Jesus is trying to illustrate how important it is to reconcile with other people. So he compares it to the highest form of worship that he can imagine. If you realize that you're sideways with a brother, drop whatever you're doing and go and make it right. Here, if you're worshiping God, and you know that your brother has aught against you, then you need to set aside your worship of God. That does not mean that you don't love God and that you're not trying to worship God, but it means that getting your relationship with your brother or sister or husband or wife or children right is more pleasing to God than any other type of worship that you could offer. That is the highest form of worship that you can give to God, is when you realize that there's something wrong in some relationship that you have, and that if I'm going to truly be able to worship God with all of my heart, soul, mind, and body, and love my neighbor as myself, which is the great commandment that Jesus gave, then I'm going to have to get it right. Had a man in my church down on the coast a number of years ago. He was in the Navy. His dad lived down in Florida, and And I forget, I preached some message. I long since have forgot what message that was, but I just remember him coming back to church that night. He said, I got so convicted in your message that I went home, and my dad and I had been at odds with one another, and I just began to talk with him, and he said, I was able to lead my father to the Lord. He worked through the situation. And God was honored because he did exactly what God wanted him to do. Later on in the book of Matthew, Jesus says in Matthew 18:15, if your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault. So now in Matthew 5, he's telling us when we realize a brother may have something against us, we need to go to him. Then in Matthew 18, he's telling us to go when we realize that we may have something against our brother. So if your brother has something against you, you go to him. If you have something against your brother, you still go to him. You got it? We're covered on either end. Now here are God's fighting principles. When there's a problem, take the initiative. Don't just let it sit and simmer and smolder. Because a fire that smolders long enough will soon enough explode. And when it explodes, there won't be any putting it out. Doesn't matter who started it. The minute you realize that there's a problem, you need to take the initiative to fix it. And when you realize your need to confront somebody, the Bible says in Philippians 4:6, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Pray about it. That's number 2. Talk to God before you talk to the other person. I know it's going to make you anxious. I can remember in my first church, had a group of young people, youth in that church, a good group. It wasn't a huge group. It was just a group of nice young people. And that church had never really done much for the youth. And so we really developed a rapport with that youth group. And I was the pastor, the youth director, minister of music, you name it, in that first church. It was just a little small country church. So I did it all. And we developed a great rapport with them, and I was planning on taking them to Baptist Youth Night up in Jackson, Mississippi. It met in the Coliseum. There'd be about 10,000 young people up there in the Coliseum. And we had one girl in the youth group who had a good friend that I was hoping she would bring with her because this good friend was lost, and I knew she was lost. So on a Wednesday night, I called Tina, and I said, Tina, are you and your friend coming to youth night with us on Friday night? Oh, no. My daddy won't let me go. And she said, we're going to ride up and down Brookway Boulevard on Friday night. I said, Tina, and I knew Tina's daddy and her mother pretty well. I said, there's nothing in the world your daddy won't let you do if it's good. And she knew I'd caught her, and it hurt her feelings. She kind of rushed out the door and kind of cried a little bit. Well, I didn't think much about it because I had not really been ugly to her at all. Because I really was interested in seeing her friend get saved. But a week went by and they didn't show up to church. Another week went by, they didn't come to church. God said, Greg, you just need to go see them. And you need to get down and grovel if you have to make it right. I went down to their house and sat down with Tina and her mom. Her dad was not working. Her dad was not active in church. He probably was not a Christian himself. And I said, Bobby, this is what I said to Tina, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. And, oh, no, Brother Greg, nothing's wrong. And everything was made right. Why? Because even though I didn't do anything wrong, maybe what I said came over in the wrong way. We never know how somebody might take what we say. So we need to get it right. Her mom died a few years later, and of course they asked me to do the funeral service and minister to the family. And had a beautiful relationship with that family from that time on. So talk to God before you talk to the other person. And third, work on yourself before you work on the other person. Look at yourself and see, am I at fault here? Have I done something wrong? Did this person take it the wrong way? And if you're going to work on somebody else's problem, you should work on yourself first, because that's what Jesus tells us to do in the Sermon on the Mount. In Matthew 7, verses 3 through 5, he says, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." Examine yourself first. Make sure you don't have something really blocking your vision where you can see the situation and the issue correctly. When you've made sure of that, then you can go and solve the problem. And finally, solve the problem soon, but don't fight while you're mad. Now, my and Vicky's, when we first married, she would leave the room emotionally and clam up. And I was one that always wanted to attack the problem. And so we came to an agreement after this had happened a few times that we're not going to go to bed mad and angry, but we're going to talk about the situation. Are there times I wish I hadn't made that agreement? You better believe it. But we have talked way past midnight on some situations. But you know what? All it did was make our marriage stronger. Don't go to bed angry, but don't fight while you're mad. Ephesians 4:26 says, "In your anger do not sin." It doesn't say never get angry, because God knows we will. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. Resolve the issue. Don't just let it smolder. Take care of it. God wants you to have a strong relationship with your loved ones, with your friends, with your family. He wants you to build a strong family. And with these principles in God's Word, you can do that.